Hello, everyone, and welcome to our info session today on psychology for the fall 2026 term. My name is Mashur Chaudhry, and I'm the manager of recruitment and sales for the Chang School. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the land on which Toronto Metropolitan University is built upon. Toronto is in the Dish with One Spoon territory. The Dish with One Spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. I thank the indigenous people of Turtle Island for their efforts to protect the land, and I deeply regret the past injustices they have endured. As Toronto Metropolitan University seeks to move forward in partnership with Indigenous people, I pledge to foster an environment that is more inclusive and welcoming to Indigenous people from all communities. Now I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's session. Your microphone is muted throughout the event so as not to disturb other attendees or the presenter. For the hearing impaired, we have automated captioning available, which you can access by activating it in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. And you can submit your questions at any time by typing them into that question box. We'll collect them throughout the session and address them at the end of the presentation. Now I'd like to introduce our speaker for today, Dr. Paul Burnett, Academic Coordinator of the certificate. And before we do a quick overview, I'd like to run a poll with everyone. And we just want to know your goals and motivations. What motivated you to consider this certificate? First is career advancement, career change, skill building for current role, or personal interest. And next is what is your current level of familiarity of the field? So your options are high, moderate, and low. So we'll leave that on for just a few more seconds and then get on with our presentation. Okay, here we go. So looks like career change is the leading option. And then we also have some people for skill building and career advancement. And we also have some people with personal interest, which is always nice to see. And then we have a mix of all. There is one person with the high level of familiarity with the certificate, a few with moderate, and some with low, which is minimal or no prior knowledge, which is totally fine because that's what we're here to talk about today. All right. Now I'll invite Dr. Paul Burnett to go over a quick overview of the certificate. Welcome, Paul.
Hi, thank you. Hi, everyone. As mentioned, I'm one of the academic coordinators for this certificate, as well as Dr. Meg Molson. So we are the academic coordinators for the psychology certificate and the mental health and addiction certificate. So if you ever have questions about either of those certificates, you can reach out to myself or Dr. Molson at any time you want. Uh, okay, so we're going to cover a variety of topics as you see listed there. So it's just kind of giving you some background on how the certificate works, some of the courses, etc. And then afterwards, we'll be able to open up to questions that you might have about the specific certificate. So the first thing to note is the fully online. So the courses are either asynchronous online courses, or we still have a few synchronous online courses. So we have a little bit of both. Most of them at this point are asynchronous. So asynchronous means that you pretty much get to do them on your own time. There are weekly kind of ideas of what you should get done every week, but there's no scheduled class time. Whereas there's still a few that are virtual courses that have a specific class time, and that's indicated when you sign up for the course. They'll tell you the time and date, and then it's by Zoom or Google Meets or something of that similar sort. One thing to note, though, is that we have changed the final exams for the courses. So for all courses, whether it's an online course or a virtual course, is in person now for the final exams. So either on campus or you can make arrangements to write at a different invigilation center near you. The CE team will help you figure that out. So there are 8 courses in total that you have to take for this certificate. 4 of them are considered required courses. 4 of them are electives. The electives list is pretty long. That's where you kind of get to tailor the certificate to your needs. So you get to choose the courses that fit best with your choices, and we'll get more into the specific ones in a little bit. Pacing, so you'll see it's 1 to 5 years. The reason why there's such a wide window is because of that flexibility. That's one of the real benefits of doing a certificate at the Ching School is you have that flexibility of doing it at a speed that works for you. So it depends on how much time you have to devote to it. Some people only take one course a semester, some take two, three. It really depends on your schedule. And so take as much time as you need. There's no prize for finishing quickly. Sometimes it's actually better to slow down a little bit, and then you could put more effort into each course and be more successful in the long run. So it's about what works for you. So who should take this program? It really comes down to, as you saw in the poll, lots of people have come to it for different reasons. For some people, it's a first step towards going to an undergraduate program. So they take the certificate to prepare themselves for undergraduate, and these courses can be transferred to the undergraduate program at TMU. For others, it's a matter of they've already completed an education in another field, an undergraduate in another field, and maybe now they're considering pursuing a graduate degree. So they're using this certificate to strengthen an application to a psychology graduate program. For others, as many of you noted for yourselves, you're in a career that would benefit from having this certificate. So it can help career advancement, career changes, help in your current role. And then finally, there are people who, and there was a couple in there, personal interests. Psychology is about learning about yourself. So we have a lot of students who take it simply because they want to learn more about themselves or the people around them. So for personal interests, a lot of retired people want to take our courses just to learn more about themselves. So whatever your reasons for taking it, it has wide ranges and you get to tailor it and make use of it however works for you. So by completing the certificate, you're going to learn a lot of different elements of psychology. You're going to get a good foundation in psychology from the theory and all the different theories that we have out there to the research done based on those theories, and then to how that research is then used in an applied setting. So those three work together, and it's really important to learn about them together. So that's one of the strengths of this certificate is you're going to learn about theory, research, application. You're also going to learn about how the research is done, not necessarily that you're going to have to go out and do the research, but learn how to read research, how to interpret research, which is really important because a lot of the misconceptions about psychology comes down to people misreading research on psychology. So you're going to learn how to not make that error. Additionally, because the last course is an independent study, you get to pick a topic that you get to dive in much more deeply. And that's something that you would contact me. I'd set you up with a supervisor, and it's a topic of your choice. So you get to really dive into it. So it's another way where you get to really customize the certificate to your needs. So program highlights, as I mentioned, there is that theoretical research-based orientation, which is really important to properly understanding psychology. Psychology is also a very broad field. So we are going to give you a foundation in psychology, especially with the first two courses, the intro courses. So 102 and 202 will give you that foundation, and then you get to specialize in the courses that you want based on the electives. So you're going to get a nice, well-rounded certificate. So here's the part that's probably the most important for you to understand because it's how the certificate works. So as mentioned before, there are four required courses. So you have to choose between 102 or 105. So 102 is a foundations course, 102 is, or 102 is the intro one, and 105 is the foundations. They are somewhat equivalent. My recommendation is take 102. It is designed for psychology students. 105 is designed for people outside of psychology. So 102 is my preference of the two, and it fits better with 202. So the other Required ones is 202, the second half of intro. Research methods, which I know scares people, research methods and stats. It's not scary. Don't worry. We have really good instructors teaching it. It's not math, math, math. It's more about interpreting data, etc., and learning how the different statistical analyses that we use and that kind of stuff. So it's not as scary as students think it is. The independent study, which is the last course you do. So after you've done all the other seven, you can do the independent study. And as I mentioned, you get paired with a supervisor and you get to dive into a topic of your choice. And then from the electives, you see we have a very long list, and you get to choose four of those that best fit your needs. So, for example, if you're leaning towards something that has to do with children, we have a lovely child development course that you can take. We have a psychology and law course. We have drugs and behavior. We have a wide variety of courses. So you can tailor the certificate to what fits for you. If you have any questions or want advice on what courses best fits your needs, you can reach out to me. You can reach out to Dr. Molson. You can reach out to the Ching advisors. We're happy to kind of discuss what your plans are, what your goals are, and suggest courses that fit that. Um, so as noted here, we have a lot of different opportunities to help you. We have different events throughout. We have different financial support that you can look into. So the CE team is here to help you. They'll provide you with guidance along the way with any kind of questions you have. You can contact me about anything, and if I'm not the right person, I will guide you to the right person. But we have a great team that will provide you with a lot of opportunities and resources to make this as successful for you as possible. So as noted here, you have options. Go check out our website, ask questions. There's an enrollment that you can start right away. If you've taken psych intro, like an intro to psych class somewhere else, there is the possibility for a prerequisite waiver and to transfer that credit. So if that is your situation, do contact me and I can give you the information about the transfer credit and I can set you up with a prerequisite waiver in the meantime. So you don't have to repeat intro to psychology if you've taken it at another university or college. Just reach out to me and we can figure that out together.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that overview, Dr. Burnett. Now it's time for Q&A, and I'll welcome everyone to put in their questions into the Q&A box, and we'll get to them to answering. So it looks like the first one is, does this certificate provide any advantage for students who eventually want to pursue a psychology degree or graduate program?
Yeah. So if you're looking to get into an undergraduate program, it helps you, it'll strengthen that kind of application, but it can also strengthen an application to graduate school. Say you've done a degree in another science or another thing, and to help you, a lot of the graduate programs will want you to have specific courses like the stats course, etc. So it'll help you strengthen that application.
Awesome. Next one is, I understand that a psychology certificate by itself doesn't qualify someone to practice as a psychologist. What would the typical education pathway look like for someone starting with this certificate and eventually wanting to become a registered psychologist?
So if you're starting here, then after the certificate, you would use that to help you apply to an undergraduate program like the one we have at TMU. And a lot of these courses can then be transferred to that, so you wouldn't have to retake them. After the undergraduate degree, then you would apply to a clinical graduate program or counseling graduate program, and then you'd have to do a master's, graduate program, and an internship. So it is a long path. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. It is what it is. And as you can imagine, it's an important path. You want registered psychologists to be well educated. So it is the first step in that path. But yeah, you have years ahead of you. But if it's something you're passionate about, take that first step and get going.
Amazing. Thanks. Next one is, what additional qualifications would you recommend pairing with this certificate to improve employability?
Vague is depends on the job. So for it would very much depend on what the type of position you're looking for. So that'd be one that I'd pass you off to. We have a career counselor at CE. So it would be reach out to them and have a conversation with them about the certificate and about your career goals, and they'll help you figure out what you need for your specific career goal.
Yes, we will be sharing that information as well at the end of the call, and please make sure you can contact us or the career and academic council advisor directly. Okay, so next person is a nurse currently and wants to know if this can help you because their job is intense and they might miss some classes since it's synchronous.
I will say nurses is one of our, it's very popular with nurses. We have a lot of nurses who take either nursing students or people who have already graduated and want to take the certificate. As you can imagine, it's incredibly helpful to dealing with patients in really difficult times to have a really strong foundation in psychology. And we have some really interesting courses that could fit in it with like drugs and behavior, adult development, etc. So I definitely strongly recommend taking it. In terms of missing classes, as I mentioned, the majority of our classes are now asynchronous, so it wouldn't be an issue. We have a few that still are, so you could technically just not take any of the synchronous courses. Or if you have to miss a synchronous class, that's get to know your classmates and ask for notes, that kind of situation.
Okay, so next question is from Megan. Thank you for your question. I'm one of those individuals who want to expand their experience. And so, are we allowed to take only some of the courses and apply these to our previous certificate degrees? I understand then you wouldn't be awarded a certificate.
So you can just take courses without technically enrolling in the certificate, but it wouldn't be added to your like your previous like if you have a bachelor's of arts in something else, it wouldn't be added to that, but you would have this extra transcript that you could use to when you're applying. It's easier if you have the full certificate because then it's something you can more easily put on your CV. Yeah, it doesn't get added to your previous degrees though. It's like an additional uh, certificate that you get to add on to your CV.
Yeah. But you can always take those one courses, like you said, right? And then next one is what can someone realistically do with the certificate alone without pursuing another psychology degree? And I'll combine that with the next question, which is, job prospects with just this certification.
Uh, if you have no other undergraduate degree, it's not going to give you a lot. It will put you a little bit ahead of somebody who has a high school, but it's not going to be a lot. It's more pairing it with a degree that's going to strengthen your application, and then it depends on how you're going with it. So it's not like take this degree or this certificate and you get this job. It's not a one for one kind of pairing. So it really depends on how you use it. Again, that's where the career counselor can help you figure out the best path for that. But the certificate on its own is not going to give you a job in psychology. It's that starting path.
All right. So the next one is I'm hoping to apply for an art therapy graduate program. Would this program give me a good foundation for an art therapy graduate program?
Yeah, so we have some courses in particular that you would find interesting, like 325 is our psychological disorders course. We have 335, which is our clinical psychology course. We have a developmental psychopathology course. So those courses would start giving you that foundation about different disorders and um, illnesses, etc., that can be helped by art therapy. We don't have an art therapy course. I think it's discussed briefly in clinical psychology. But it gives you that foundation of knowing about those different disorders, etc. So choose those courses, and then it will put you in the right path. You might also want to look at the mental health and addiction certificate that might fit better for you.
Awesome. Next question is from Max Zimmerman. Thank you for your question, Max. For the exams, are these written in person or at a different location if you live outside of Toronto, or are they proctored virtually? So, from what I know, if you're more than 100 kilometers outside of Toronto, then we can find you someone in that area. But otherwise, it's in person on campus. But correct me
Yeah.
if I'm
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. So if it's within 100 kilometers, you're expected to come to campus. If it's outside of 100 kilometers, there are different invigilation centers nearby. Other universities will have setups for it as well. So then you can work with the CE team to figure out where to write, but it will be in person somewhere else.
Yeah, and there's always a lot of support available, so get in touch with us and we can help you do that. Um, okay, next question is, are the courses primarily theoretical or are there opportunities for research, projects, or practical experience?
So you're not going to have practical experience in the sense of going to a lab and helping with a study. That's not an option. There is some practical experience in terms of you get to participate in some studies so that you can see how it works. So the 102 and 202, you have that option. You do have research projects in terms of writing papers and doing research like literature reviews, etc. And then the independent study, which is a very in-depth kind of literature review, but as in going into a lab and conducting research, you're not going to do that with this.
Okay, moving on to the next one is how much of the certificate focuses on foundational psychology versus specialized areas?
So the only two that is foundational is 102 and 202. After that, the other courses, all the ones you get to choose for your electives are specialized areas. So we have one, for example, we have an entire course on sleep. So you learn very intensively about sleep, dreams, sleep disturbances, etc. We have a course on stress, for example. So we have various courses of psychology and law courses. So we have a lot of specialized courses, a sports psychology, sexuality course. So that's where in those electives you get to choose those specialized courses that you want to take after taking the foundational 102 and 202.
So AI is a hot topic that comes up on pretty much all of our sessions. And one of the questions is, are students taught how to critically evaluate AI-generated psychological information? Because everything is
Yeah. So even before AI, one of the focuses of our intro courses is how to read all the various things you see on Facebook and Instagram and all that kind of stuff about psychology, because a lot of people like to make up stuff about psychology and put out really what we refer to as pseudoscience of fake information about psychology. So it has been for a while now, one of our focuses on learning how to properly evaluate stuff you read. And obviously, we've now extended that into AI. So you see that in a lot of our courses talking about how to properly research what AI says, because guess what? It's not always right. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. So you need to learn how to evaluate that, and that's starting to be incorporated into our various courses.
amazing. Awesome. Yeah, that's great to know because yeah, it is an evolving uh, subject and there's changes every day. So I'm glad that it's being incorporated. Next question is from Karen. I'm a registered art therapist plus psychotherapist who is registered with CRPO. In the past, I've applied for jobs that don't recognize my credentials and prefer a social degree. Would this program elevate my credentials to that point?
It won't replace a social worker degree. So if that's the goal, this won't satisfy that. But they are credit courses, undergraduate credit courses. So they apply like any other, like if you took these courses from the undergraduate program at TMU, it's the same equivalent to the courses. So they are proper undergraduate courses and would count as such.
Amazing. Okay. Next question is how much would could the psychology certificate at TMU help someone who wants to improve their GPA and strengthen their chances from being accepted into a master's program in in counseling psychology from Elif Ornek. Thank you, Elif, for
I
your
will
question.
be very blunt with that. It really comes down to you. So I've seen some students who have done that and done it successfully and have significantly increased their GPA and made their applications much more competitive. And then there are some students who have tried to do that and have not managed to actually raise their GPA. So you need to put in the work because again, they're proper undergraduate courses, so they're not easy A's. You have to work at it and put in the work, and then you can definitely increase your GPA, but you have to work for it. But it's done, it's regularly done.
And then one of the questions that I think I missed before was, will I get reference letters if needed from
Yeah,
other
what I
courses?
recommend is making sure to actually communicate with your professors. So it is a lot easier for a professor to write you a reference letter if they know you. So, schedule meetings to discuss course material, email asking questions, be involved. If you've had no communications with a professor throughout the course, and then you ask for a reference letter, the only thing they're going to know is how well you did in the course. And that's going to be a very generic reference letter. So if you're looking for reference letters, make sure to put the effort into actually get to know your professors and more importantly for them to get to know you so that they can write a much stronger reference letter.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you for that. There was another question which Dave, our career and academic advisor, answered really well. I just want to read it out loud just for everyone to hear it as well. It was from Sophia asking if I want to transfer to TMU undergrad after my certificate, are all of my courses valid? So certain courses are, if you are planning to apply to the degree, certain courses might not give you the transfer credit, but not all of them. So please email Dave at ceadvisor@torontomu.ca to get some specific guidance on this. Okay, so another question is, with an undergraduate degree in biochemistry, if I wanted to apply for a master's in psychology or counseling psychology, would this certificate paired with volunteer work be sufficient?
It would certainly help. It would definitely help increase your chances. I'm not going to make any guarantees, obviously, but it would definitely help. The biochemistry is a nice pairing. Um, so I think it would be a good way to approach it.
Awesome, thank you. Love that. Another question is, many courses for the fall session are currently full, including the Intro to Psych. Is there a waitlist option, or do we have to wait for the following semester?
So we don't have a waitlist option. However, what I'd recommend is keep an eye on the enrollments because there's a lot of people who sign up for courses then drop out of courses. So there's a lot of movement in the enrollments between now and when the courses start, and you can enroll into the second week. Dave can correct me if I'm wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure it's second week. So keep an eye out. There's usually movement, and you'll see spots open up. So do keep an eye on that. But that is something to keep in mind. In terms of our courses, they do tend to be popular. They do tend to fill up earlier than some other areas. So generally speaking, moving forward after you start, look into when the dates are, the enrollment dates for different semesters, and sign up early to avoid disappointment. It's your best way.
Yeah, I know from my experience with the other certificates that this is one of the more popular certificates, and Intro is one of the most popular courses. So yeah, like Dr. Paul said, please keep a lookout on our website, or you can contact us directly to get some information. First week of September, I would say for the upcoming semester is a good time to do a check and see if there is any open spots that are available now.
Yeah, there's tends to be a lot of movement around, so keep an eye out.
Okay. Yeah, so right now looks like there are no more open questions. There were some really good questions that came through, really good dialogue. Thank you so much for your answers. And to everyone, you've taken the first step to show your interest and attend this info session. And if you liked what you heard and are interested, please get in touch with us and we can help you out with any other questions that you have. Any other final comments that you'd like to share, Dr. Burnett?
I think my main thing is if it's you're coming back to studying and you haven't for a long time, it is best probably to just start with the one course, like 102. It gives you a chance to figure out how much of a bandwidth it is for you, like how much time you have to dedicate to a course, figure out if one course per term is the right approach for you, or if you can handle more than one. Sometimes students come in very enthusiastic, which is great, but take on too many courses at one time and then they find it difficult. So I do think the best approach is start with that one and kind of get your feet wet, see what it's like, make sure that you have the time and then decide how many courses per term works best for you.
Amazing. Yeah, that's a great final comment. Okay, so before I make my closing remarks, we've got one last poll that we wanted to do, and it's just some feedback on how we did and how likely are you to take a course from the certificate. So with that, I just wanted to say thank you to Dr. Paul Burnett for going over this overview and joining us in the Q&A session to answer all of our questions. And thanks to all of you for taking the time out of your day to attend our session today. If you're interested in learning more about the certificate or enrolling any of the courses, please visit continuing.torontomu.ca. And if you have any other questions, you can contact me directly at mash.chaudhry@torontomu.ca. You will receive a follow-up email with this presentation and the recording and a survey within the next 24 to 48 hours. And on behalf of the Chang School and all of our presenters, thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of the day.
Bye, everyone.